There are times when every leader needs to hear a certain message. There are times where every leader needs to know certain things. And I remember a story, I'm recalling a story, and it comes from a television, well, not television show, but a movie that I've seen. And this movie was a Broadway play or off Broadway play for a number of years, and it's called The Fantastics. And in The Fantastics, there's so many things that you see that aren't really what they are. It's one of these things where you can. It's a story of a boy and a girl who fall in love, and their parents pretend to have their two dads pretend to have this feud, so that the two will fall deeper in love because they secretly want them to be together. But they figured if they supported it, that they would never buy in because they wouldn't want to do what their dad thought was best. So it's just a really, really interesting story. The reason I bring it up is because it's always the things that aren't always as it seems that I find to be an interesting conundrum when it comes to dealing with people who are new to leadership positions. They they don't necessarily know what to do next or how to get to ask the powerful questions, or how do they get to the point where they can say and do the things they need to do. So it's much like in many stories where you hear about the person who reads tarot cards or the person who is disconnected. A leader is trying to figure out the future for themselves and for the people that work for them. They are trying to leverage common sense to figure out some things, and they're trying to leverage facts and information and data to figure out some things. But if you're trying to become a leadership wizard, there are certain things you have to know how to do. And I think that sometimes it requires us to dig a little deeper to figure out who we are. And I think that if you take the time to figure out who your team members are and you take the time to build them up, that you'll end up building this army of problem solvers, and the organization's going to love you for it. But I think that they're just a set of words. It's just a small set of words. It's 9 words that can really change every leader's perspective. The 9 words I'm talking about are, if you had a choice, what would you do? So this is kind of like my help me understand. So I tell a lot of people who are not in leadership positions to use help me understand to figure things out. So help me understand why you feel this way. Help me understand how this is a good idea. Help me understand what we can do better. Help me understand as a powerful, powerful tool. But in this case, I'm going to read it again. If you're a leader and you're asking team members or other leaders, if you ask them, if you had a choice, what would you do? This empowers them to feel good about being part of the decision. And even if you don't do exactly what they say, it gives you a chance to listen thoughtfully to what they have to say, and it gives you a chance to exemplify being a servant leader. I think all too often we half-heartedly say, "Oh, well, what do you think?" And it comes across as insincere. It comes across as not real. So it's almost like leaders wish they had that pack of tarot cards or that special book or crystal ball so they could see into the future, but it just doesn't work that way. So leaders have to rely on intellect, feelings. They have to rely on hunches. They have to rely on what they perceive, perception a lot of times. And sometimes that goes really well, and other times not so much. So if you can get to the point where you build such good rapport with other leaders and with team members, and you could say those words, I'm going to say them one more time just because they're so powerful. If you had a choice, what would you do? It doesn't matter what the situation is, right? If you ask someone, what would you do? A lot of times they know that you're being sincere about solving a problem or asking a question or getting them to the place where they need to be. And I think that it puts you in company with some elite leaders. One of the things I know is when I'm dealing with big leaders, large leaders, leaders from the Walt Disney Company, leaders from Chase, leaders from Walmart, leaders from all these different companies where I've had an opportunity to do some work, leaders from SpaceX. One of the things that I've found that they have in common is that they're always good about saying, I might know the answer, but I might not. And I'm going to close with this thought. It's a story from Nelson Mandela. He was with his grandson on a tribal council, and the people at the council started going nuts talking about a problem and how they were going to solve it, and they were just all over the place, right? And his grandson was a little bit upset. His grandson was like, aren't you going to say something? Aren't you going to do something? And he says, if you don't say something, it's going to be like this all, the whole time we're here. And Nelson Mandela smiled at him and said, he says, if I say something, he says, everybody's just going to listen to what I say and go with whatever I tell them to do. He says, what if someone here has a better idea? He says, it's always better to speak last because then you'll get to hear everybody else's idea. He says, and then after you hear everybody else's idea, then and only then can you chime in with, your opinion or your thoughts and kind of bring it all together, pull it all together. And I just thought that was so interesting because I don't know that I ever looked at those kinds of decisions that way. But it definitely reminds me of that quote because he wanted people to have an opportunity to speak about what they would do so he can make sure that what he was proposing was the right thing to do. So my advice to you if you're a new leader is to get used to saying those terms, especially to other peers and especially to other people. And when you do that in act of humility, it's going to help you be the positive leader you can. That's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want to discuss, learn more at AgileDad.com. I would love to hear from you. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care. Bye now.